Hello, cracks. How are you today? This is Al Platino from Madrid, Spain, and I'm going to talk you about how to create tension and release for electronic music. Okay? The material I am gathering in this video is coming from an artist called Belibat, which was creating really good content on the internet. He had a YouTube channel under his own name, Belibat, and he was working with machines that like the Roland TR-8S and also the Arturia Keystep Pro, and he was doing a lot of tutorials about creating live electronic music with DAW-less sets, and also he was having a very good tutorials about the progression of the music and how to change this energy on the music, which can help you to create the transitions smoothly and also to migrate or move from one track to another. Okay, unfortunately the channel from Belibat was deleted from the internet. I don't know if he's okay. We were asking in the communities, but he's not anymore online, and the videos on his channels were deleted. But luckily, I was able to follow some of his tutorials and take down some notes. So I am going to reproduce one of his videos where he was teaching about tension and release, how to create tension in the electronic music. He gave some tips. I wrote down 7 tips, but there are much more. But we're going to explore these 7 tips, which can help you a lot to enhance and create the energy and manage the energy in the music. Okay, so let's start. I have here with me Machine MK3 version. Is the version that goes with the machine software here on the screen, and just compared to using it with Ableton Push, which I have also, I like a machine because the hardware has a lot of immediate response. Okay, the response of the buttons is really quick, and also the way of interacting with the software is really fast. Is the same example as when you work with Tractor. You know, you move the feathers and the knobs and press the buttons, and the response is on real time. Here in Machine, they have done a very good job. The paths feel a bit strange if you are used to all hardware, but when you connect it to the computer and start seeing the reaction and how the velocity curves responds, they are really good compared to Push, where you have much more options in Ableton Live and Ableton Push 2, but the immediacy of the buttons and the hardware is slower, and maybe the touch feel is better, but the response is perfect in Machine MK3. Okay, I suppose that in the Machine Plus is the same response, but I heard that the hardware is really slow. I prefer to use it with a computer because it's much faster, and you can put a lot of plugins and a lot of sounds. Okay, so we're going to create a pattern, and initially I'm going to work on a pattern very basically. As you know, if we press the browse button here in Machine, you can have access to a lot of the libraries that come with complete basic, complete, other version of complete, where you have millions of sounds. But I suggest you to start learning Machine from the very basic and use the basic sound that come with the machine itself. Okay, how can you get access to these sounds? Okay, instead of going to the libraries, pressing the browse button, you can push the plugin button here, and you will access this screen, which gives you access to the very basic empty pattern. Okay, so just to start, if you press here File and then press New, you will get asked, okay, you are going to create a new project. You want to discard? Yes, discard, and we start from scratch. As you know, in Machine there are 3 levels: masters, group, and sound. Okay, you can have 16 sounds in a group, and then you can have 8 groups and even more, and then being managed or controlled by a master channel. Okay, so let's work on the sound level. Okay, you have in machine 16 paths, and what I like to do is to use the same structure of the sounds in all the machines, because I have here, for example, the Roland TR-8S, which gives you the TR style layer of sounds, and you have, for example, here in the pad 1, you have the kick, in pad 2 you have the snare, in pad 3, 4, and 5 you have the toms, here you have the rim shot, the claps, open hi-hat, close hi-hat, open hi-hat, cymbal, and ride. Okay, if you agree in a convention of sounds, for example, I use the Roland TR-8S convention, which is that I use the kick in the first position always, the snare in the second, and so on. You can work much faster, and when you save your work in different libraries, in sampler, in the hardware machines, I work also with the Electron Octatrack, also with Push. If you do the same layout, it will be much faster for you to work in the future, because you change the machines, and sometimes, many times, you are lost because of changing the workflow, because you are using different hardware. Okay, so I'm going to use the Roland convention, which basically puts the kick on the first cell, on the second the snare, and so on. Okay, so I'm going to start loading sounds here, and as you know, you just click here on the first path, then go to sound, which is already selected, and I click on this plus button. How can I click on this? Because this screen is not touch sensitive. You have to use the dial here. So you just press down here, I press down, and you have access here on the right to the list of all the instruments that you have. Okay, I'm going to select the kick, because I have the first cell selected. I load the kick. Now the kick is loaded, and if I go back to the paths, it starts working. Okay, I'm going to now load the second sound. For the second sound, I'm going to use the select button and press the second path. You can also be in pad mode. If I click here in pad mode, this button, and then I can select whatever pad I want to work. Okay, click select. This pad is selected, as you see, pad number 2, and then I do the same procedure. I go to the plugin button, and then I am the sound part here. I click plus, press this controller, the rotary controller, and I have access to the basic set of synthesizer and percussion synthesizer from machine. I'm going to use the snare now. Okay, I'm going to load it. Perfect. It's loaded the snare. As you can see in pad mode, and I can go here in the software as well, you can see that on the first cell I have the kick, and on the second the snare. On the hardware side, here's the kick, and here is the snare. Don't forget that you have to be in pad mode to be able to work on that. Okay. Instead of recording live, I'm going to use the step sequencer just to put the sounds in the cell. Okay, so I'm going to select here the step button, is the fourth here on the right, and this gives me access to the sequencer. So how can I put the sounds? Okay, first I select the kick. Okay, and now I can select any cells that I want the kick to be played. So I'm going to create a 4 on the floor. Here, 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 and here. If I press play, you will see the player moving here. Okay. At this very moment, I have created a pattern, right? So this pattern, when you start from scratch, you can configure in the software how long you want the default patterns, but if you don't put anything, it's automatically, and I just created a one bar pattern. Okay, how could I add the second sound, which are the snares? Okay, I just click on the select button and click on the snare, or I can click on the pad button and play the second pad. It's already selected, okay? If I now go to the programming of the grid of the steps, I click on the step and it's blank. Why is it blank? Because I am using the second sound and the second sound is totally empty. If I press play, you will see the head moving, but it is not marked by anything because I have the snare sound selected and this lane is empty. So I'm going to create a snare sound here and here, very basic, okay? And then if we go to the screen, you will see that this is created. Really easy, okay? What is next? Okay, I'm going to add some hi-hats. So with that, we will be able to do the exercise about the tension and release, okay? So for the hi-hats, I'm just going to create, select the sound as well. And because I am using the Roland TR-8S convention, I'm going to select here the button, and instead of going to the next part, to the third, I'm going to jump to the 8th, which normally the 8th sound on Roland machines is the close hi-hat, okay? So I just click here, I release, and then I go to the plugin button to come to this screen where I can add sounds from scratch, not from libraries. I press the controller button, the rotary button here, and then I can go through the list. I'm going to load the hi-hat. In this list, you don't have open hi-hat and close hi-hat because there is only one hi-hat for both. So I just go, I'm going just to load the hi-hat, okay? And then if I go back to pad mode, I just can press the 8 pad, and there's the hi-hat, okay? If I go back to the edit of the sound, pressing plugin again, you can see that you have a lot of parameters here. You have 8 parameters under the rotary knobs, and you can see here 1/3. I don't know if you see it because of the mirror, but there is a one of 3 pages. So you can move pages using these page buttons here, left and right. So if I move the pages, you can see I can go through the different parameters of this instrument, of this sound. I am with the hi-hat, okay? So for example, here the third rotary knob is the decay of the hi-hat. So if I press here, if I press the pad, I move the decay. It makes the decay of the hi-hat shorter or longer, okay? So what I'm going to do, because it's a closed hi-hat, I'm going to put it very short, like that. 22, 20 is okay. I can also change the tune and also the type of hi-hat, okay? I'm going to leave it in silver. And then I can proceed to program the hi-hat. I'm going to put a hi-hat on every single part of the grid, okay? So for example, well, let's do that in just these ones. For example, I press step. I'm going to use these cells to fill with the closed hi-hat. I press play. Perfect. And then we're going to use we're going to program the open hi-hat. Basically, you select pad mode, press the next cell to load the sound, and then go to plugin again. And on the screen plugin, I press the controller and I select hi-hat again. But in this case, I'm going to select a very long decay for this open hi-hat. And maybe something longer, okay? Okay, and then if I want to program this one, I just in pad mode select it, or using press select, selecting the path I want to program, and then I jump to step mode. In a step, I will have the grid and also the same grid on the screen, this one. So I can just put on machine the different cells, these four, for example. Okay, and I'm going to load the last sound, which is the cymbal. So in this case, I'm going to select the path mode and I'm going to go to path number 11. Why 11? I told you that I use the convention of the Roland TR-8S. So I click here, no sound. So I proceed then to plug in the plus sign. I press the controller and then I select from the list. I will select the cymbal. Okay, or maybe another one, maybe a right. Let's see if we have a right here. Cymbal. I think the right is also inside cymbal. Okay, yes, here. You move it and the type of cymbal is right. Here you can change the different parameters. If you are touching if you are beating the cymbal, the right with the bell, from the edge, how much is the width? This sounds good. So I'm going to program it as well. So I select a step, and then I would put this randomly like this, for example. All right, so we have the basic pattern now. How are we going now to use the different create tension and release things? Okay, very easily. The first of all is the first trick to create tension and release is removing the kick. Okay, so what is removing the kick? Just muting it. Okay, so I'm going to show you the whole pattern in the software. What I'm going to do is just muting the kick, okay? There it is. How did I do that? Well, in machine, you just press the mute button and then select which instrument you want to mute. Okay, in this case, the kick. So I'm going to do the tension and release now. I just press start. Okay, so this is the first trick, very easily, just taking out the kick, creating this tension, and then releasing, putting the kick back. Second is opening the decay of the hi-hats or opening the decay of other instruments. Usually it's good on the hi-hats. So what is the decay of the sound? The decay is how long the sound starts to fade, okay? So if I just, for example, if I mute all the instruments and just leave the hi-hat here, you can change the decay and modifying the sound from a closed hi-hat to becoming just like a open hi-hat. If you do this with the music, listen. Okay, in this case, you create the tension and then release. You can also do that with all the rest of the music. You will listen to this effect very subtle, okay, from now on, but you will feel it, of course. Let me show you. I close the decay of the hi-hat. I press play. I'm going to start it. And now you go back to the very beginning, all right? One more tip that I'm going to show you is the use of the lock button in Machine. The lock button is here, and the lock button allows you to freeze the parameters of everything in Machine, making changes and then going back to the initial configuration. So how can you apply that to this technique, for example? Okay, very good, very easily. You just leave everything as normal, as a standard pattern, like now. Okay, and before starting and creating the tension, you just press the lock button. Okay, and with the lock button on, you can just start changing parameters. For example, I have already selected the decay of the hi-hat. And once I finish, instead of going back very fast to the initial parameter, I can just increase it, and then if I press lock, it goes back to the initial parameter when I push lock. Okay, so how does it work? Very easily. I just press play. I press play. I'm going to press lock now. So the decay is at 3.7. And now I press lock again. So I release the lock. It's a way to go back to the initial configuration of the sound, of the groups, or the master. This is a very good thing because, okay, if you are just moving one knob, it's really easy. You just go back and try to match the initial value. But if you are changing a lot of things, you can go to the start position very, very fast, just releasing the lock. Okay, next. The next tip to create tension and managing tension and release is to pitch or turn up the sounds. You can do that with the cymbals or with the hi-hat, okay? With the cymbals, you can maybe pitch them down. With the hi-hats, pitch them up. It's really easy and very similar to the one before. I'm just going to show you that here on the screen, I have the tune of my hi-hat in 47, okay? Which is fine, but I'm going to do this exercise in a different sound. So I'm going to select pad, and I'm going to select another sound like the cymbal, okay? So in this sound, this cymbal, I can change the tune of it. Okay, so it's the same step as before. I'm going to lock the position of everything, and then I'm going to move the tune of the cymbal and then release the lock, okay? So I just press play and press lock as well. And now I'm going to make the transition, okay? Starting now the transition. Okay, and you go back to the very initial step on configuration of the sound. Okay, the next one is the rolls, the snare rolls. Very typical in the trance music and music from maybe 10 or 20 or even more years ago, right? So it basically is using especially the snare sounds and making it repeatedly, making a lot of beats, like 16 beats per bar or something like that. So I'm going to go to the selection of the snare. It's my second path. I press select and this. So basically what you can do is go back to the step configuration, and instead of doing just these two, I'm going to fulfill it off I'm going to fill the grid of notes. And if I press play, everything will sound, which is not good. But what you can do in Machine is using the mixer, which is a new button I'm going to show you today. You can just use the mixer here. You have access to the mixer. And here you have all the mixing of the sounds, all the volumes. So basically what I'm going to do is lower everything here for the snare. And you can make use of the lock button as well with the mixer. So I'm going to lock the snare volume in this trick. I'm going to go increasing the volume of the snare and then going back to the lock. Okay, so listen. This is the start position, snare volume down and locked engage. Okay. So this was the fourth tip and trick to create tension and release. The next one is to use some effects like a beat crashing on the snares, right? Or maybe other instruments. So the beat crash is a way to lower the quality of the sounds. When I started making music with a computer called Commodore Amiga, it was the computers and the chips that make the sound were not really good, and you had to work in chipsets with only working with 8 chips to create the waveform of the sounds, which created a really bad quality in the sound, but at the same time it is like nostalgic. Okay, so in this case, this effect has been like recovered from the past, and it's called beat crunch. In Native Instrument Machine is called on another way. Okay, it's called lo-fi, low fidelity. So I'm going to use this to show you how it works. So let me show you. I'm going to take out the programs of the snare and maybe just leaving this. And I'm going to apply the effect just for the snare. Okay, how can you apply that? Very easily. You just go to the plugin button again, and here you can see your snare sounds. You have to keep an eye on which level you are applying an effect, because you can apply it on a sound level, on a group level, and a master. I'm going to use it on the sound level. I have already here the snare. How can I add effects? Here on the right. So I just move to the right the rotary knob, like here. You just, instead of pressing, you go to the right. Okay, and when you have the cross lead, you press it and you have a list of all the effects. So I'm going to use the lo-fi for low fidelity. I load it, and here is the low fidelity effect. Here I have the number of beats, and the lower the number, the more crunchy the sound will be. Okay, I'm going to just put on solo the snare, the sound of the snare, and show you how the sound changes. All right, so we're going to use the same technique. I'm going to put it on the 0 position, on the starting position, and you can also work with the decay of it, and both the decay and the beat crash effect for the snare. You can combine also techniques to create tension and release. So I'm going to put back the sounds take out the mute, so I have the solo enabled for snare. I'm going to take out the solo, so everything sounds now perfect. And I'm going to program the transition of the snare, both change the decay and change the lo-fi with the lock. Okay, so I start, I press lock, and now I go to the snare on the left, I have the decay, I go right, I change the beats of the lo-fi, beat crash, and I take out the lock button to go back to the initial position of the tension, and I create the release. Okay. Next one, the next one is really known because it's the high pass filter. You can use also low pass filters, and in this case, as well as the DJ, they use this kind of filter effects, low pass and high pass, for everything in the music. So how do you do that in Machine? Very easily. You have to make sure that you apply the effects instead of the sound level. For example, I can apply it to the group because I have all the drums in the same group. Or if I have other synths, I can apply the filter on the master for everything that is coming out of Machine. I'm going to do that on the group level. Okay. And for that effect, for the filter effect, you can do it in two ways. I can add the effect here and just select the filter. Let me show you filter. Filter here, filter. I load the filter, and this filter is applying every sound inside the filter. Okay, so I will put it on high pass. I will go to the very left, so everything up of 46, it will pass the filter. You will hear it. Let me show you how it sounds. Okay, and you go back. How can you do that? With the same method, you just press lock, press play, and release the lock. There is another alternative to the high pass filter, which is the low pass filter. In the same effect, you can, instead of using HP, you use LP, low pass. And in this case, because it's a low pass, everything below 46 Hz will pass. So you have to start, the start position is at the very top. Go to the right, this is the start position. And listen how it sounds. In this case, you go down. So, yes, you just use the same lock button. So I press the lock button here with the initial position. Now I release the lock. Okay, the last trick that Belibat created in that video was the create a space and create reverb. Okay, so you can use a reverb effect to create a lot of echo and then take it out. So how it works? Well, very easily, you just go to machine and then I can leave the filter, or I can just simply hitting fish and bypass. I can mute it with the bypass button here, pressing the shift, or I can even remove the filter from the exercise below before, and then I'm going to add in the group, I'm going to add an effect for the reverb. So I'm going to use the ice reverb. I load it. Okay, and in this case, which is the knob we are going to turn? In the case of reverb, I'm going to use the mix one, the mix, which is the wet mix in effects. So I put at 0. Well, first of all, I'm going to see how the reverb sounds, because I can adjust the other parameters like the color, the ice, and the size. Let me show. It's a very extreme reverb, okay? So you have to keep an eye and not adding very much, maybe between 0 and 25, something like that. So it's the same, you just press restart. I'm going to lock the configuration and then start. So that's it. These are the 7 ways of creating tension and release. Original video made by Belibat. And now you have this version that we have created with Machine MK3, but of course you can replicate it to any hardware or any even synthesizer. We have done it with drums, but you can use these techniques in another instruments for your live use. Okay. And now, finishing this, I'm going to try to do a whole music now, like 2 or 3 minutes, using a combination of all the tricks, okay? So listen and enjoy. That's all. Thank you very much for coming to the video. If you have any questions or any tips or maybe another transition technique that you have in mind, write that in the comments and we will be happy to discuss about that. Take care. Ciao, ciao.